The events and kerfuffle around Serena Williams have once again thrown into sharp relief the issues around victimhood and its power as a political tool, a weapon even. There's not a lot of point getting into the specific detail about this. Plenty of other people have gone on about that. But the idea that a top-level sportswoman at the top of her game, who has been for some time, a multi-millionaire, can throw a tantrum and then use their status as a woman and a person of colour to somehow escape the same kind of punishment that plenty of other people get for such behaviour is peculiar. It's weird, and it shows how victimhood has been pulled away from being circumstantial, from being something meaningful, to something that is linked purely and entirely to identity. But how did we get here? Much as the right wing might like to decry the modern left as being a bunch of fragile, glass-like special snowflakes or whatever, and while the left has tended to play up the politics of victimhood for reasons which I'll get into a bit later on, it is bipartisan. It occurs on both sides. You'll certainly see the right wing playing into this idea of victimhood, the conspiracy theory, the conceit, the idea of white genocide is trying to turn whites into the victim and to claim the power of victimhood. When someone like Alex Jones gets censored off the internet almost entirely, you'll see the politics of victimhood on the right as well. The interrogations that the social media companies are undergoing, this is also the politics of victimhood. Now, the right tends to apply it in a more circumstantial basis, while the left has embraced the identitarian side of it. But it does occur on both sides, so it's not really a partisan issue, and obviously, me being me, I'm going to be approaching this from a left-wing perspective. The root of all this, the power of victimhood, lies in our evolutionary ancestry, our status as a social species. Now, much as the right wing might like to ignore and decry this side of human nature, we are, by nature, cooperative and altruistic as much or more than we are selfish and psychopathic. Even Ayn Rand's concept of objectivism sold itself in part on the idea that by everyone being radically selfish, it would somehow be better for the community as a whole, a betterment for humanity as a whole. So even the most starkly and archly selfish of philosophies still had to, pay some lip service to the idea that this was better for everyone. So why are we like this? Well, we are a social species. Our success, evolutionarily, comes in huge part by the fact that we cooperate with each other to do things. You can see this in our closer ancestors, our biological cousins, chimps especially, but other groups as well. Troops will work together. Ones who are particularly good at one thing will do it and everyone will benefit. Particular monkey climbs the tree, knocks down the coconuts, and everyone eats. This is how it works, but there's always those individuals, because there's variation in personality and temperament and so on. There's always those individuals who try to cheat the system. And so we're kind of hardwired, because group survival depends on everyone working together, we're kind of hardwired evolutionarily to hate people who cheat the system and to sympathize with people who are the victims of that cheating. If you put two monkeys in side-by-side cages and you give one a little bit more fruit than the other one gets agitated. This even happens with our more distant cousins, like rats and so on. Basically, virtually any animal that's remotely social in its structure seems to have this kind of feedback loop built in. Occasionally, selfishness is good for your survival as an individual, but when you're part of a community, you depend on this mutuality. It increases your survival chances as a group, and that's why that kind of personality, that kind of cooperative nature has become so hardwired into who and what we are. You can see this at a complete biological extreme in bees or ants, which are called eusocial, in that they basically form a single collective organism made up of thousands, millions of individuals, but operates as a single organ. That's the extreme. That's the full extreme down that direction. Humans aren't that. We're somewhere between that and pure psychopathic individualism. But that's why we value altruism, and that's why we punish cheating, and that is why we have sympathy for people who are victims. This tendency, this evolutionary psychology that we have, that's hardwired into us due to our nature as this cooperative species, obviously expresses itself in various ways in our societies. Even under monarchies, where absolute power was invested in a single individual who often used that power for themselves, there was still the concept of noblesse oblige, that they were obligated to look after their subjects. Charity has long been a way in which we have expressed this altruistic side of us. And then in our modern industrialized society, where larger and larger and larger scale cooperation became obviously useful, obviously had utility, in that society we have instituted welfare. We tax the whole, we use that collective pot to make sure everyone has a basic standard of living, a safety net, no one is left to die in the street. Much as people rankle against that in some ways, it is more efficient. If you're a fiscal conservative, you should be all for socialized healthcare and other things, because they cost less and they provide more. But the point is that, you know, these conflicting natures we have, the selfish and the altruistic, are expressed in our politics. Very, very broadly speaking, you can say that the left has advocated constant reform and increasing collectivization, altruism as a whole, to our species as a whole, and the right has tended to be the more selfish side, the more survive at the expense of others side, even though it sells itself as being different to that. I'm not actually making a judgment in this piece, though obviously I am left-wing. I'm just trying to kind of sketch out where it is. You can call it tough love or whatever if you like, if you prefer, if that makes it more palatable to you. But this is basically the split that we have or have had up to this point in our politics, the altruistic and the selfish. And like I say, the left has tended to fixate more on this politics of altruism. And there have been injustices in the past. There have been times where victimhood has almost entirely overlapped with a particular identity, such as race. But this is, even there, more specifically an American experience. But America is so culturally dominant in many ways that it has exported its understanding of particular victim cultures and so on to other nations where it's a lot less applicable. As time has gone on, as we have succeeded in making our societies fairer and more equitable, as the injustices of the past, like slavery or segregation, have faded away, even while that's happened, the power of victimhood and the tie of identity to victimhood has really not diminished particularly in its power. But where it was about circumstance, it is now increasingly and almost purely about identity. The left used to be about circumstance. It used to be about, you know, evening the scales between rich and poor, and wealth is a pretty good measure of someone's power and success in society, and poverty is a good way of showing that someone has not succeeded. But there are plenty of people that deserve to succeed that do not have the opportunity because investment simply hasn't been there in education or health or other issues that maximize their opportunity to meet their potential and contribute the most to society and to succeed the most personally. But as the left has decoupled from the idea of this contextual victimhood and solving these contextual victimhood problems, it has fixated upon identity. The black identity in particular has become linked with victimhood and the idea of injustice, and while this was certainly true historically, over time it's much more to do with wealth. But the identity-based victimhood persists, and that is how you can get a circumstance, as with Serena Williams, where someone who has succeeded massively in life, who has behaved badly, can still call back to their identity as a way to shield themselves, as a way to tap into that power that lies behind that collective guilt and that desire we all have to right wrongs in order to escape judgment. And this happens in everything. And the flip side to this, the even darker side to this, is that victimhood status, real, genuine victimhood status, that exists on a circumstantial basis, can be rejected also on the basis of identity. If your identity is held to be that of an oppressor rather than the oppressed, then good luck getting your circumstantial issues and unfairnesses addressed by this current overriding philosophy. If you're a white man with mental health problems, for example, you're going to be pretty shit out of luck when you try to get help for it, because that's circumstantial. And you're white, and you're male, and you're cisgender, and you're heterosexual, all of which have been tagged as oppressors. And the oppressors cannot, apparently, ever be oppressed. It doesn't matter that you've never oppressed anyone in your life. It doesn't matter a jot. It just doesn't happen. Sorry for making it personal, but I think the power of victimhood is in making it personal and talking about your own circumstance. So that might help get it across to some people. So how is this playing out exactly? Well, I think a couple of things particularly exemplify it. Serena Williams can be treated in exactly the same way as any other tantrum-throwing tennis player would be, and yet can call to victimhood on the basis of identity, in spite of the fact that her circumstance demonstrates that she is not really a victim in any way. Indeed, the victim in that circumstance was the umpire, who was given a shitload of abuse for no real good reason. And on the flip side of that, you can see how cases of genuine victimhood are rejected on the basis of identity. And the way that the right has been trying to claim the power that lies in victimhood and identity politics as well. When we consider the situation of the white farmers in South Africa, yeah, and I'm even being kind of roundabout in talking about that because I'm aware of all these politics around it. They are having their land seized. The situation is more difficult and nuanced than many people think, and they're not responsible for things that their ancestors did. So they are genuine circumstantial victims, but because they are white and because they're in South Africa and because apartheid is still very much in people's minds, and because the right has tried to back them up more than anybody else, their victimhood status is being rejected by the consensus of much of the international community, especially where left-wing values hold particular sway, certainly socially if not politically. So their genuine circumstantial victimhood, the horrors and so on that are going on there, are rejected as genuine victimhood because of their identity as whites in a country that historically was oppressive, whatever the case might be now. And the right trying to cash in on the victimhood there, to use it to project ideas. I mean, the far right, the alt-right's concept of white genocide doesn't apply here, but their attempt to co-opt it into that has also worked against them. It's probably done the people in a bad situation a disservice, because it has just led more people to reject the idea that these bad things are going on, and they are. We really need to get people to refocus on circumstance rather than an identity, because within an identity category, you know, race, gender, sexuality, gender identity, sexual preference, all of these things, there's a wide variety of people within all of those, and you need to examine them as individuals and their situations to determine who is actually a victim or not, and who deserves our sympathy and our assistance and the maximization of their chances to succeed. When you fixate upon identity, and it's particularly weird that this comes from the left, you're not any longer dealing with the circumstance that they're in, their wealth, things that matter, you know, and you're engaging in profiling and bigotry on the basis of race, gender, sexuality, gender identity, all the rest of it. You're being the very thing that you originally fought against, and ironically, which emerged out into this identitarianism we see today. Let's just stop, shall we? Not that anyone's gonna listen to me. Zang.
Oh no, not me. And I got down by my reputation. I've never been afraid of any deviation.
This is horrible what happened today. See, I don't like I have, okay, like a lot of you, I hate a lot. You know? But I hate with style and creativity. Yeah!